And welcome. Yeah, surprise. We're doing a 1 hour show and we're going to talk Game of Thrones. Calm down. It won't all be about the show. Although I'm sure Doku, in his blinding rage, will definitely bring up Starbucks and cups at one point or another. But I mainly want to talk about the books and the story, which is an allegory for the War of the Roses. Doku, you are of the opinion that that's lazy writing. I'm of the opinion, as a history buff and a history major, that I like a little fantasy added to history. I like the fact that in the show, at least, the Starks end up on the throne.
Well, I'm gonna correct you real quick. It's not lazy writing; it's lazy storytelling, and I do want to emphasize that there is a difference. The writing is good. Yes, there are fantasy elements to it, but it's lazy storytelling because it is essentially just a rehashing of the War of the Roses with a somewhat different flavor. That doesn't mean it's bad. If you like the show, if you like the books, that's fine. It I like it myself, but it doesn't mean it's good storytelling.
No, and Farty, yeah, we're still on with this. You know, there's an entire Game of Thrones community on YouTube. I really wouldn't mind breaking into that a little bit, considering I do cover entertainment and Game of Thrones and Star Trek and other outlets. So yeah, I don't want to talk about the election anymore. And this isn't an attack on you, but I hate it when I bring up a new subject and there's always a regular that goes, "Really? Talking about that?" Yeah. Yes, we are.
And I would rather I would rather talk about this than the election, to be perfectly blunt.
Time to get our mind off the disaster. But okay, so it's not lazy because George R. R. Martin definitely isn't a lazy story writer. Yeah, and I've talked about flat Earth too. But anyway, um, oh, man, dejectors everywhere. Um, George R. R. Martin, the books themselves are thick. I didn't do it lazy and get the audio book. I got the real books. Now they burnt up in the fire, so now I'm stuck looking for an audio book for free or whatever if I want to listen to it. But I read the books. Okay, it's a long read, and I like his writing style. I like the first person. You don't really know what the other characters are doing, and it's all about the scheming to begin with. So that's a perfect way to write that type of story.
Well, and that's the thing that George R. R. Martin does very well. Uh, the story at large, yeah, it's just a rehashing of the War of the Roses with some other historical events tossed in there. Where George R. R. Martin really excels is focusing on specific characters and how those characters progress and advance and grow as the events of the story proper moves forward. And in that instance, he does a really good job. The story, though, the story itself, it's not clever. It's not unique. It's the War of the Roses with dragons. That's all it is, and it changed my mind.
Well, no, and that's what is kind of endearing about it is the War of the Roses aspect and the fact that he plays with that history. And a lot of people don't like history. So a lot of people don't know it if it wasn't for him.
Oh, and you're not wrong, especially in the first 3 seasons of Game of Thrones. It has nothing to do with dragons. It has nothing to do with magic. It is a political drama. That is what Game of Thrones is at its core. It's a political drama set in a medieval and a medieval. It's in a medieval setting, and yeah, there's some kind of magic. It twists things around. It changes the narrative up just enough where it's not a complete rehash of what happened throughout history, and it makes it entertaining. And like I said earlier, it focuses on very specific characters that have a good you come to like them, hate them, whatever it is. It makes the story engaging. But at the end of the day, it's just him rehashing the War of the Roses with a few different elements of history thrown in there just to change it up enough that it fits for the setting. But that doesn't make it original, clever, or unique. And that's kind of my issue with it.
Yeah, but what does make it somewhat original, especially for the genre, is you never know who is going to die because he is basing it off of reality somewhat. You say darn near 100%, I say about 50-50. Um, I think the religion of the old gods is Catholicism, the religion of the seven is Protestantism, and then you have the Dothraki, who are the Moors. So that's Muhammad and Islam, in trying to invade the European area, which is Westeros.
Yeah, no, that's fair, and it is a good analogy. It's a historical analogy. I'm not gonna say it isn't appropriate. It is. But again, at the end of the day, it's not an original story. It's a rehashing of history from from a certain perspective. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just my issue is it sticks far too closely to well, it's obvious what it is.
Yeah, but so is Tom Clancy. Only difference is he's blatant about it.
Well, no, that I'm gonna give you pushback there. With Tom Clancy, all of the situations that he proposed in his works, they're not historical. They're hypotheticals. Game of Thrones is not a hypothetical. It it is a recounting of history with some fantastical flair. Uh, take away the dragons, take away the children of the forest, take away the magic, take away the waif, take away what was the masked woman? Quaithe, take away Quaithe. It take away everything magical from Game of Thrones, take away everything fantastical off the wall and aloof. It's history. It's the War of the Roses. There is nothing different about the War of the Seven Kings than there is about the War of the Roses. It's the same thing. The only thing he changed is instead of being two houses fighting, there's seven. That's the only thing he changed. Which again, it does take a certain amount of skill to present these characters in a way that you get attached to them and you see their stories. But at the end of the day, what is the story about in the first 3 seasons? It's the Lannisters versus the Starks. That's it. And then they have the smaller houses like, you know, the Boltons, Dorne, Baratheon.
Is that it though?
Yes,
No, because I think you're downplaying the supernatural aspect. And I think you're downplaying the wall. Maybe the wall is a metaphor for Hadrian's Wall, perhaps, but Hadrian's Wall was no way that big, and they were trying to keep the Scots out, not White Walkers.
But the wall. I'm sorry, Des. I'm gonna have to cut you off there. The wall, the White Walkers, the Night's Watch. That's only there for the sake of developing a character and developing some tension in the story. But at the end of the day, the first 3 seasons of Game of Thrones is just about the Starks versus the Lannisters. It's a political drama, and it only recounts the War of the Roses, and it sticks to that story arc for the first 3 seasons. Yeah, you might get your scene where there's a White Walker here and something crazy goes on in the wall. But at the end of the day, that's not what the story is about. The
Yeah,
story is about Robb Stark versus King's Landing. It's about Winterfell versus King's Landing.
okay, but you're talking show. I'm talking books. There's a lot more in the book.
Oh, there is, and you're right on that instance. There is more in the books, but even in the first 3 books, they only vaguely touch on the greater threat. It still largely focuses on the major players when it comes to, again, Winterfell versus King's Landing.
Did you
Lannister.
just skip over Jon Snow's chapters or what? His uncle goes missing. Forging groups are vanishing. Oh yeah, a White Walker. You know the one in the show that showed up in like the end of season 1? That's towards the end of the book when or the middle of the book actually. There's a lot more after that. They store that White Walker down in under the wall where they store their meat. And turns out a frozen wall really stores meat pretty well because they have a bunch of stuff frozen down there. Um, but yeah, there's a lot more in the books here. There's a lot more to the Bronze story portrayed in the books as well, and the three-eyed crow. Um, or a raven. Is it a crow or a raven?
Raven.
Three-eyed raven and the crows are the guys on the wall. Easy mix-up. Sorry.
But even then, that's just there to give you that flavor where it's not just a fantastical thing. It's not just a recounting of the War of the Roses. It's not just a recounting of the Moors invading Europe. It Yes, there is something more to the story. It's there to keep you engaged. It's there to hammer home the fact that this is a fantasy story. It's not just a a retelling of the War of the Roses as a whole. But if you look at what the story is, they don't George R. R. Martin doesn't focus on those fantasy elements outside of the fact of he wants to keep you engaged and remind you that this is not the real world. This is Middle Earth. This is, there's Mordor. There's White Walkers. There's the Children of the Forest. He wants to remind you that this is not simply just it's something that is grounded in reality. There is a fantastical element to it. But that's the only thing those elements serve, because at the end of the day, what's the bulk of those books? It's not about the White Walkers. It's not about the Three-Eyed Raven. It's not about the dragons. It's not about why the hell is Daenerys, didn't die in a fire. No pun intended. It's not
Um,
about any of that. The
okay,
majority of it is focusing on the characters, which again, well written, but it's a political drama set in a medieval setting. The fantastical elements are just there to remind you that it is fantasy.
yes, it's a political drama. Absolutely. I never disagreed with you there. But the first book, what does it focus on? Not Eddard and Robert. Not really. It focuses more on Catelyn and John, um, Bran. It focuses a lot on them. Arya. I think, has almost the lion's share of chapters, really, because the fight with Joffrey, her getting her wolf to run away, which in the book is running around with a giant wolf pack, and Arya is having wolf dreams and actually hunting, just like John does. Um, you need to go back and reread the books or listen to them. There's a lot more depth there, which is why there's so many theories crafted. More theories than I think even the author meant for there to be.
But even then though, it's still focused on lineage, and even with the wolf dreams and the warging and all of that, it's still an allegory for lineage and what each character has to do, like what their ultimate goal is in life. It Yes, the fantasy elements do play a role in it, but it's not because, oh, they're all wargs or because there's this fantastical element. It's an allegory for what is expected of a prince or a princess or a king or a queen. It's an allegory. It's still, at the end of the day, saying this is what these characters are going to do or what they're meant to do, because that's how fate or destiny has predetermined how they're going to ultimately meet their fate or what they're ultimately meant to do. It's not a fantasy element. It's there for no other reason than to give you some more depth to the character without going into very dry and very lazy exposition, which I applaud George R. R. Martin for using those elements to not go into just boring, lazy exposition saying, well, Arya didn't like this and Sansa liked this. I applaud him for doing that. But when it comes to those fantasy elements, he doesn't use them in the sense that this is a fantasy story. He uses them to juxtapose the characters and show you that this is essentially the idea of fate. This is how these characters are, and this is how they're going to act, and the story proper and the larger story. It's not there for the sake of trying to be fantastical or fantasy.
Oh,
It's there to be the other side of the character.
okay. I'll ask you a simple question. What do you expect from a medieval fiction or a medieval fantasy novel? What do you expect? You expect them to ignore lineage? Do you expect him to ignore blood, which they all, and even to this day, I wanted a son so my family name would be carried on. Lineage and blood matters even to this day. It definitely mattered in medieval Europe.
Well, so I guess I have to ask the question. Do you expect me to view Game of Thrones in the sense that it's fantasy first and realism second, or realism first and fantasy second?
I think it's a blend of both of them. I don't know if there is a first or second.
That's kind of my issue with it. Is I don't I don't view A Song of Ice and Fire as a fantasy story. I really don't. It And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. It, Going back to what I was saying earlier, the fact that George R. R. Martin focuses very much on characters and he doesn't focus on the fantastical and the spectacle of what you could do with a fantasy story. There's no gigantic tower with a magical eye and magical rings, or you know, to be blunt, you could leave out the dragons and Game of Thrones wouldn't change that much, or Song of Ice and Fire, it wouldn't change that much. What George R. R. Martin does very well is he focuses on the politics and the landscapes and the world and how these characters interact with that world. And that's a good thing. And he does it extremely well. I wish Dan and Dave did it as well as George R. R. Martin did, but that's not my point. My point is that this isn't a fantasy story. It really isn't. yeah, you have okay, there's the wolves. Okay. The wolves are there to serve as exposition without going. And then he thought this, and then she thought that. No, they're there to give you a better idea of how these characters are and how they think and how they interact. They are two sides of the same coin. And
Yeah,
that's a
yeah,
clever
no,
element.
no, and I'll back you up. Look at Jon Snow's wolf. It's not weak by any means, but it isn't Robb Stark's wolf. Robb Stark's wolf led them into battle. It was Robb and the wolf that moved in and led them in the battle of the Whispering Woods. A battle that they won hands down and captured Jamie Lannister. So that is a reflection upon how Robb thought. Robb saw a target, Robb attacked it. Jon Snow is different. Therefore, his wolf is different.
Well,
Arya's wolf.
if you remember correctly, even Jon Snow's wolf was the runt of the pack. He was the outcast. They were going to kill it, and it was Theon. It was Theon, and this is where I think the show actually really screwed up. Is Theon said, "Nope, that's your wolf, even though you're the bastard child, but you're still a Stark." Well, that wolf was the runt. It's like, here you go, runt, take it. It's a really good way to juxtapose and actually frame the characters in the first chapter. You know exactly what these characters are, how they think, how they act, and it's reflected by each wolf. That is really well done. That's very clever, but that's not fantasy. That's just a really clever plot element, and I love it. I don't get me wrong, I'm not knocking that. I think it's great, but it's not fantasy. And I don't like it when people say just because, oh, there's dire wolves. Like, I have a dire wolf. That's not fantasy.
Well, yeah, and if to continue to make my point, Arya's wolf. Like I said, when she makes it go away, that wolf thought, okay, you don't want me in your pack. I'll go make my own. What's Arya do? She goes to Bravos, makes her own way, right? The independent spirit is within both of them. And then Rickon Stark. He's all over the place emotionally. I mean, this kid got ditched by his parents, and now they're both dead. And then he gets kidnapped. Like he might be over in Skagos in the books. Nobody knows. He just disappeared. His wolf is called Shaggy Dog. I really hope that George doesn't do what the show did and just kill Rickon off, because a Shaggy Dog story is a story with no point. You know what I mean? It's like a red herring. And that's
Yeah,
the analogy.
yeah, no, I agree with you because there was a lot that could be done with Shaggy Dog and Rickon Stark, and I get that you have to pay actors, especially on a show like Game of Thrones, an exorbitant amount of money. I get it, but there's a lot you could have done with that story arc, as opposed to just casting it to the side and just pretending like, oh yeah, you remember this thing from season two? Yeah, we're just never going to talk about that again. That's you could have done better. You could have done better, but then that's the unfortunate part about long form stories like this, especially when it comes to something like Game of Thrones, where it doesn't translate well to TV because of those limitations. But it still does go back to my point where if you're gonna kill off Rickon, you're going to have to kill off Shaggy Dog as well, because they're the same character, which is part of the reason people got really upset that Jon Snow didn't have Ghost, because Ghost is supposed to be there. Like, did everybody forget that Ghost saved Jon Snow and the Lord Commander? Uh, it just Ghost is just not there. Uh, no, Ghost should have been there the entire time.
Well, yeah, but those limitations don't go to print format. And since the show is over, and I would like to make more episodes of this, I figure we should base most of it, other than this first one, obviously. It's for the moment, so we'll go with both in a blend. But moving forward, I think we should talk about the books because the books are still there. Winds of Winter will be released. A Dream for Spring and the next one.
Uh, it's Winds of Winter and A Dream of Spring, and then after that, it's done. So there's two left, and I I hope Winds of Winter comes out soon because where no one wants to acknowledge that final season. It's just so bad. I'm not even upset anymore. It's just it was a bad season. It was rushed. It
Yeah, well, you know what? I am mad. Dan and Dave ditched Game of Thrones because Star Wars was beckoning. Now they're fired from Star Wars. Screw you, Dan and Dave. Should have did a better job on Game of Thrones. Bet you'd be doing a Star Wars movie.
actually this is what I'm gonna say about uh Dumb and Dumber, Dave, Dan, Dave, D.B. Weiss, and Benioff. What annoys me about them, HBO was going to give you guys not just the season that you went with, they wanted to do another 10 episodes. They're going to give you a season after that too. And you said no. And I legitimately do believe this. The reason they wanted to wrap everything up wasn't because they wanted to jump to Star Wars. It's because they realized they couldn't live up to what the series had built up to. And the fact that George R. R. Martin wasn't working with them, they got to they came to the conclusion that yeah, no matter what we do, it's not going to be season 1, 2, and 3. We're not going to be able to achieve that that level of you know, character development, that level of intrigue, that level of anything, uh, anything that the first 3 seasons had, they would never be able to pull off. And
Well,
so they just decided to go for broke and just end it as quickly as possible.
well, the thing is, the first book as one season works. Okay, that works. But the second book, which I believe is a Storm of Swords, the war, should have been 2 seasons. So now we're at season 3 with material left. Then you go to, or no, Clash of Kings is the second book, right?
I forget if it's. I know it's a Storm of Swords and a Clash of Kings, and then a Feast for Crows is the fourth, and then
Well,
a Dance of Dragons is the fifth.
yeah. All 3 of those books are 2 seasons, and then A Dance with Dragons. I read it. It was kind of boring. I say 1 season. So we're at what? How many books? Game of
We're
Thrones, Storm of Swords, Clash
we're
of
five
Kings.
in. We're 5 in.
Okay, with at least 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
So before they ran out of source material, it's 5 books for 6 seasons, and then it's basically on D&D. And obviously that's where things start to go south because it was at the end of the 3rd season that George R. R. Martin pulled out and stopped giving them, creative input. and it was essentially just Dan and Dave doing the best they could with the information they had and what they knew. And I'm gonna look at George R. R. Martin and say, dude, you should have stayed on as a creative consultant at least.
No, or we'd be waiting another year for Winds of Winter. When is the estimated release date? I'm gonna look that up.
Oh, and no, and Dodge, I'm gonna call shenanigans. I'm gonna call Mulligan on that one. And the time we've been waiting on Winds of Winter, there has been one book, it's a sci-fi book, I forget the name of it, that George R. R. Martin worked on that was released, and we're still waiting on Winds of Winter. He he could have still at least worked on Game of Thrones as a creative consultant, and he didn't.
Winds of Winter, estimated release date 2021.
Oh, and Undead Ramen. Yeah, it's Clash of Kings was second. So Storm of Swords would be the third, and then Feast for Crows would be the fourth, and Dance of Dragons would be the fifth.
Yeah, and Dance of Dragons was kind of dry, which I think is why he's taking so long with Winds of Winter. Is because of the books, in my personal opinion, the weakest is Dance of Dragons.
Well, and did you read the scene? I know there's the scene where Danny jumps on the back of Dorgan. He flies out of the fighting pits. But that scene in the show compared to what it is in the book is so incredibly different.
Yeah, yeah, it is, and a lot of it is different. Tyrion Lannister is not the Brad Pitt of midgets.
Uh,
Okay,
the
homeboy
way
has
that
no nose.
the thing is, yeah, we all know Tyrion's character was written so much better in the books, and we all know his character went nosedive south in season 5. And that's unfortunate because Peter Dinklage is an amazing actor. It's unfortunate that the writing was terrible. But the reason I bring up the dragon pit or the fighting pit scene is because in the show, obviously the Sons of the Harpy all come out and they surround everyone. Dorgan, you hear the dragon, roar, and comes in, flies and picks up Danny, and Danny jumps on his back, flies away, and yada yada yada. That's not how it happens in the book. How it happens in the book is there's actually multiple fighting pits, and Daenerys doesn't like this, but she realizes, okay, and this is where Daenerys's character actually starts to develop in a very good way, where despite her going around and trying to free all the slaves and do this and that, she finally gets to Marine and realizes, like, yeah, I can't really change everybody's culture. And if I try to, despite the fact that I have dragons, they're gonna rebel and they're gonna rise against me. And you have to meet them somewhere in the middle. So
Yeah, when she leaves Marine in the books, it goes back to the slavers.
yeah, it does. And this is where I think Dan and Dave, Dumb and Dumber, really messed up because this could have shown Daenerys's character realizing that despite that she has her own personal ideals, she can't change the culture of an entire civilization that's been around for hundreds, if not thousands of years. So she allows them to have their gladiatorial fighting pits. And they fight and fight and fight. And there's this one final bout where I believe it's like one, mountain-esque style warrior. It's big, strong character, and stabs a boar, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, in the show, Danny's about to get swarmed by the Sons of the Harpy. That's not how it happens in the book. In the book, Drogon just shows up because he smells blood from a boar, and Drogon lands in the middle of the fighting pit and all the people that are fighting are like, holy crap, it's a dragon. That's going to be the best thing. Like, that's, who couldn't make a name for themselves by killing a dragon? So they attack Drogon and they stab spears into him and everything. And like the spears, when they stab into him, the way he describes it is that the spears actually start melting, and then the scales around him actually start fusing back together, like he's got like some sort of Wolverine style instant heal. And Drogon's just pissed. It, you know, fucks everybody's day up, eats the boar, and everybody's trying to kill him. And then Daenerys just walks into the fighting pit, and everyone's like, no, 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 no. And then Drogon looks at Daenerys and's like, oh, hey, what's up? And then they start trying to kill her. And that's when you get the point like, oh, yeah, the city's turning against you because the monster, the evil dragon that's been ravaging the countryside. Oh, well, now Daenerys is the bad guy.
Well, yeah, and oh, you know how I would have spread out those other books into 2 seasons? Um, Undead Catelyn, anybody?
Mm,
Dan and Dave, you idiots.
yeah,
Your
lady.
your show was on at the height of zombie fucking mania. At the height of The Walking Dead. And you left out zombie Catelyn? Are
Yeah,
you retarded?
yeah, they didn't do anything with Lady Stoneheart, but you know what? I'm actually gonna give them a pass on Lady Stoneheart because we still don't know where her arc goes. The same way we don't know where the Red Woman, we don't know where her arc goes as well. And so I'll give them a very not happy pass, but I will give them a pass on that one just because those are two characters that they couldn't explore just because I don't know if even George R. R. Martin knows what those characters are going. The same way where I don't know if they knew what to do with Azor High. I don't know if they knew what to do with the big one that I have an issue with is the Red Priestess, the main Red Priestess that came from a shy by the shadow, where she looks at Varys and goes, "Do you wanna know what the voice said when he threw your junk in the fire?" And yeah, we get that one scene, but it's completely forgotten. And then Varys gets killed. I want to know what he said. It That's the Lord of Light. That's one of the most that's one of the biggest mysteries in this entire series. I would really, really, really like some answers to that one.
Yeah, and Undead Ramen says Walking Dead fandom actually began to die out about then. They had an audience ripe for the picking. No, they did. And I don't know where George is going to go, obviously, with Lady Stoneheart indefinitely, but I know what he has. He created an agent of vengeance, blind vengeance,
On the
woman
way
wrath incarnate in front of you. If you remember, the last place you see Brienne of Tarth in the books is about to be hung.
on the way I always viewed Lady Stoneheart compared to where we see her in the books is it does seem like she is it, and obviously I could be wrong. This is theory crafting, but she does seem like a character that is, a victim of old magic, which would be the same thing as the White Walkers. It's this victim, or they're a victim of vengeance. It, it's not that they want to destroy humans or destroy the children. It's that they are a they are very much a victim of circumstance. which is how I've always viewed the White Walkers. They are a victim
Well,
of
if
circumstance.
you're going with the allegory I was pointing out about the old gods being Catholicism and the gods of the seven being Protestantism, then they would be possessed, demonically possessed, right?
Well, yeah, and exactly, and that's why I view the White Walkers in the same light that I view Lady Stoneheart, where it's yeah, there's magic involved, but it's not that there was any any explicit intent to make them evil. It's it's the intention behind the people that actually resulted in their coming into being, whether it's White Walkers or dragons or numerous other things about A Shy by the Shadow. If you want to know more about that, go by the World of Ice and Fire. A Shy by the Shadow. Dragons are commonplace, as far as we know, but it's not that anyone explicitly created the White Walkers or Lady Stoneheart for the intent of being evil. It's the nature of the people that created them that resulted in them being what they are.
Well, yeah, and Undead Ramen says I haven't read the books. Oh, I'm sorry, we're spoiling a little bit for you then. Um, she literally just got them. She's only watched the series so far and was so bitterly disappointed in the last couple of episodes that she had to see the differences.
Yeah, it, the show for the first 3 seasons, the show does stick fairly close to the books. It starts to deviate in the fourth season, and then by the time you hit season 5, it it rushes things, but it still sticks to the books. It's again just very rushed. You have to remember actors are expensive. But season 5 still sticks to the books. It's only until the last seasons past 5 where everything just doesn't
All
doesn't
right.
feel right.
So let's spitfire because you said you had an hour because it was so late. We're at 18 minutes. I'm going to throw some theories at you. I want to know your thoughts. All right. No, the Macer conspiracy one is not the first one I'm throwing at you. The Dornish master plan. Have you heard this theory?
Hit me. Tell me what it is. I know I've probably heard it, but
All right. So, the Dornish master plan. Dorne knows that the Lannisters killed, his sister, right? That fight happens almost play by play in the book, the way it does on screen. That's why I was even like, oh, when he popped his head like a pimple. Um, but the thing is, back in Dorne, he's plotting. He does send people to Daenerys to either marry her or take a dragon. That's their goal. And why would that be their goal if they are loyal to the crown, therefore loyal to the Lannisters? Because everybody and their grandmother that has Alzheimer's knows that the Lannisters were committing incest. They know that those children are not Baratheons. So the Dornish master plan has been this grouping up of houses to help Dorne overthrow the Lannister influence on the crown and place themselves there. So if you want to look at history, it'd be like Spain trying to conquer England.
well, Dodge, you have to remember, and in the books, and obviously this was confirmed in the show, so obligatory spoiler warning. Uh, Lyanna Stark and Rhaegar Targaryen, they got married. They had the annulment and got married in Dorne. So obviously Dorne knew. So yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, so obviously Dorn knew. Dorn obviously has a hand to play in it. So what that plan is, I don't know. We're gonna have to wait for the books because the show doesn't explain it. But they did get married in Dorne, and that's where Jon Snow was born. And again, spoilers, the show confirms that because Bran Stark himself says, oh, his last name's be Sand. Because he was born in Dorne. So clearly the Baratheons and the Targaryens and the Starks, it was those northern countries going against Dorne and the group that had High Garden. The hell's their name?
Oh, the Queen of Thorns.
Yeah, what was their house name?
House
Tyrell.
Tyrell. Yes.
Yeah. So it was
they had the gay guy, so their house name wasn't going to go very far. But you know, it is what it is.
Oh, and also it would make sense that because Dorne and Tyrell would have known the true heritage and lineage of Jon Snow, which would also align them with the Targaryens. It would make sense as to why House Bolton, House Lannister, and House Baratheon would want to wipe out all the Targaryens, but also be natural enemies to Dorne and Tyrell, which they were. It would make sense as to also why you would want, if you're thinking of from the perspective of Robert Baratheon, yeah, keep your friends close, keep your enemies closer. Robert Baratheon, in my opinion, was never Ned Stark's friend. He wanted to make him hand to the king for a reason. It's not because he was his friend and he fought against him in a war. It's because he knew something.
He fought with them in a war at his right hand. They were fostered together. They grew up friends. I disagree with you on that. Eddard and Robert were best friends. That's why Robb Stark is named after Robert Baratheon.
But think about it. Even in the show, the first time you even meet, when you see Ned Stark and Robert Baratheon interact with each other, do they really seem like friends to you? Or does it seem like Robert Baratheon?
Would you talk to a king like this? You're all lined up.
Oh, no, dude, in the very first scene.
You've gotten fat. Eddard looks him up and down. Really?
But no,
you don't call a king fat, okay? And when Robert Baratheon offers him to be Hand of the King, Eddard, being so old school, drops to one knee, right? Robert goes, "Get up, you old fool! I want you to run my kingdom while I drink and whore my way to an early grave. Don't act like I'm giving you anything."
No, dude, I'm gonna give you pushback on that one. Even in that first scene, go back and watch episode 1. When you very first see Robert Baratheon and Eddard Stark look at each other, tell me there's not some sort of feeling you out. I'm uncomfortable about this. Tell me it doesn't have.
I can tell you why that is. That was the murder of the Targaryen children. Eddard last left Robb before the war with the Iron Islands, which happened 8 years after the rebellion, or 4 years, something like that. The Iron Islands got all uppity, but he left pissed because Eddard could have been king. Nobody said Robb had to be Robert. I keep calling him Robb, but that makes people think of Robb Stark. Robert Baratheon was made king basically because of a third cousin type connection to the Targaryens, and the fact that Eddard just left pissed.
Oh, and that's the thing, because there is also Targaryen blood. Tell me there's not something there where it is like, I want to keep you close to me. Hey, yeah, he could be mad about the Greyjoys and the Iron Islands, but Eddard already had Theon. There's no reason for that there's no reason for that type of uncomfortable distrust that you can tell is palpable in that first episode with the way they very first interact before it's yucking it up. That very, very, very first interaction. Tell me that is not them sizing each other up, trying to figure out, do you know something that I don't? Oh, by the way, I'm going to make you hand to the king. I don't want to be. You don't have a choice. Tell me that is not keep your friends close and your enemies closer.
I believe that his enemies were already close, and I believe Robert when he says, in the show and in the book, that Eddard is the only one he can trust. The rest out here are playing politics. Eddard isn't. That's the problem. That's why Undead Ramen is correct.
Except Eddard was playing politics the entire time, because what was Robert Baratheon's goal in the first 2 seasons? Hunt down all of the Targaryens, even if it was their bastards, even if it was his bastards, because Cersei was doing the same shit.
Okay. Do I think that Ned or Eddard was worried about Jon? Yes. Definitely. Do I think that he didn't want to go to Esteros to kill the Targaryen wench, as Robert put it? Obviously, he said so in both forms of media. But I still think Eddard was the only one Robert had to trust. And if Robert had the good sense to listen to him and to back him when it came to the Lannisters, and if Eddard would have moved quickly and talked to his friend, things would have been different.
Well, and that's the reason I bring it up, is because I think Robert Baratheon knew Eddard knew something, and he didn't come to him to be hand to the king because he thought he was the only person he could trust. He came to him to be hand to the king because he knew something, and he wasn't telling him. Because you always see him. Go back and read the book and watch the first season. Robert Baratheon is always trying to get Eddard Stark to get him to say something. And that's the reason Eddard doesn't complain about Jon Snow going to the wall. Because he knew something. And Robert Baratheon knew he knew something. But being the honorable man he was, wouldn't say it.
Well, perhaps. I mean, Robert knows that Eddard went to the Tower of Joy. He knows that only Eddard and his friend Harlan Reed made it out alive, and he knows the Kingsguard and Eddard's sister, his betrothed, died.
Oh, and also in the books, who dies, who gets killed by Eddard Stark at the Tower of Joy?
2 of the 3 knights. The other one has Eddard. Eddard gets disarmed, and he's about to be killed, and Harlan saves his life.
No, in the books, it's Sir Arthur Dayne. Sir Arthur Dayne, who's a very important character, and this is one of the things that irritates me about Dan and Dave, because they completely ignore this character. Sir Arthur Dayne is the greatest swordsman in Westeros, and he dies at the Tower of Joy. And the lie that gets pushed forward is that Eddard Stark killed Sir Arthur Dayne. but that's not true.
No, Harlan did from behind.
And that's the thing, Sir Arthur Dane. And that's the other thing. We don't know where Dawnstar is. Which is another one of the most important swords. More important than ice or
I believe that Eddard would have took Dawnstar back to Dorne. That's where it belonged, but he didn't go all the way back to Dorne. But he did have a thing for that Dornish woman, who ended up committing suicide. I believe she committed suicide because Jon and her baby got switched.
Oh, see, this kind of goes to my point where Robert Baratheon would have known something, because Eddard Stark, yeah, he's a good swordsman, but going up against Sir Arthur Dane, he's never lost, and his sword, Dawn, was essentially ice, but yeah.
But Eddard didn't fight with ice. Ice wasn't that type of sword. Eddard fought with a normal sword. Ice was ceremonial, mainly a headsman's weapon.
So wouldn't that make you wonder, like, how did you kill him? Because everybody says, oh yeah, Eddard Stark defeated Sir Arthur Dane while he was wielding Dawn. No, that doesn't make any sense. So thinking about things from Robert Baratheon's perspective, wouldn't you want to actually go and be like, yeah, I'm gonna make you hand it to the king because I'm gonna want to keep you close, because nothing about this makes sense, because I'm still looking for all the Targaryens, and there's at least 4 or 5 missing. And oh, by the way, Lyanna Stark, dead. Rhaegar, dead. But Lyanna Stark died while giving birth. Where's the baby?
Does Robert know that, though? I never read anything that told me that Robert knows that there was a baby involved. She was found in a, how do they put it? Or how does George put it?
But it's been confirmed that Lyanna Stark died in childbirth. So how would you think that Robert Baratheon didn't know that she gave birth while having, whether he realized it was a lope or whether she was stolen away and had the bad R word, because YouTube is not going to like that word, and at least she died giving childbirth. How on earth would he not be aware of that happening? Who is the one person that could be sheltering or keeping that knowledge of where that bastard child is, if it was not Eddard Stark?
Well, no, and last theory, because we're about to hit an hour. This has to do with Eddard and Benjen and Lyanna. The theory is Benjen goes to the wall because Benjen knew Lyanna willingly ran off with Rhaegar. He was complicit. That was his big sister. He said, whatever makes you happy. And Eddard showed back up and was irate. And banished Benjen to the wall.
I've heard that theory, and honestly, I don't really think there's that much to it. I think, if anything, Benjen got sent to the wall just to keep his mouth shut Maybe he knew, maybe he overheard something, maybe he was there at the Tower of Joy. Who knows? But I don't know why people focus on that theory, because in that instance, I don't think Benjen's character is that important.
I do not think Benjen is the same as Cold Hands. Sorry, not buying it, Dan and Dave. Not buying that bullshit. I'll wait till George reveals it if it's true.
Oh yeah, no, the whole Benjen is cold hands thing, that's a fan theory, and I think it's the same way. It's the same thing as where we got the Clegane Bowl. It's just them giving fan service. I don't think Benjen, Stark, and Cold Hands are the same character. I No, if anything, Benjen's hanging out with the king beyond the wall, or Benjen is the king beyond the wall in the books.
That would be intriguing because the king beyond the wall in the books snuck in to Winterfell, or no, that was in the show, right? Snuck into Winterfell and watched the king. He was there for the feast. Benjen was there for the feast.
I would think it would be more likely that Benjen is the king beyond the wall, because what better person to rally the free folk than someone who actually knows not only Winterfell and the intricacies of how Westerosi nobles work, than to be someone who was a Westerosi noble, then to be banished to the wall, then to go north of the wall, and then spend 10 years, which lines up with around the time he was banished to the Night's Watch, only to become the king beyond the wall. It would make sense that at least Benjen would at least be the advisor, or at least the person who set that in motion.
But we have hit an hour. We are gonna start doing more a Song of Ice and Fire videos. I would like to do more theories, maybe come up with our own, and I think you kind of did. We'll talk about that Robert Baratheon and Eddard Stark thing more in depth, I think, because I see where you're going there, but I disagree. So I think we could have a good back and forth on that one.
Oh, the one I would really like to talk about is, because I don't think the show addresses this, and it's because I don't think George R. R. Martin wants to reveal uh, the answer behind this, and I don't think Dan and Dave are clever enough to give us a good answer. Who are the White Walkers, and what do they want? Because it's not just they're the evil bad guy and they want to destroy everything, and Bran Stark's the three-eyed raven, and no, I don't buy that for a second. There has to be something more, because in the books, they ignore Ashai by the Shadow, they ignore Azor Ahai, they ignore a lot of what's gone on with the Children of the Forest and the First Men, and they don't really tell us anything about the Long Night, the first Long Night. They just treat the White Walkers and the Night King as some sort of stereotypical bad guy, wants to kill everything, no real rhyme or reason. They're just evil for the sake of evil. I don't buy that for a second.
Yeah, and I kind of think the Three-Eye Raven is a bad guy. I think he is the same character that's in Duncan Egg. And Sir Duncan the Tall is Hodor's father. See, I got lots of these, but we're going to end up going another hour if we keep talking.
All right, well, I'm just gonna toss you one theory just so you have something to chew on. I think the White Walkers, I don't think they originated from the First Men. I don't think they originated from the Children of the Forest. I think they were there asleep long before the war between the First Men and the Children of the Forest, and it was only once the breaking of the neck that they woke up.
That's interesting. Undead Ramen. Aren't they mindless thralls under the control of the Night King? If not mindless, then compelled at the least. I don't think so in the books. I really don't. Because
Well, so in the books there are whites, which are the zombie things that you're thinking of in the show. There are whites, but the White Walkers themselves are independent and sentient, and they well, presumably they can create whites, but you have to remember in the books there is no Night King, there is no single unifying entity behind the White Walkers.
yeah, and most of these fuckers are Craster's incest kids.
Yeah, so that's why this is where the books and the TV show actually really deviate, and it makes it confusing. So, yes, there are zombie-like entities that are somewhat under the control of White Walkers, but White Walkers themselves, you might as well think of each one as being their own Night King, where they have their own army, but there is no king amongst White Walkers. Or they're in the books, they're called the Others. They're really more just a force of nature. That they're not an army. They have no king. They have no thrall. It's they're just there, and in the lands of always winter, waiting to make your day a really bad one.
Yeah, they're like Russians on Crocodile in Siberia.
I would I would rather deal with Russian cocaine bears than I would with the Others as far as they're portrayed in the books. Because again, this is what kind of irritates me about the show. Yep, just kill that one guy and then, the threat's gone. That's not the way it's portrayed in the book. You can kill White Walkers and it doesn't stop them.
Thank you. Somebody appreciates my damn comedy. um, and I don't think if Jon Snow can survive out there meeting the others, okay, and if that one deserter could survive meeting the others, how the heck did they get Benjen? And why the heck would some child of the forest help his ass? I don't buy
Good
that story.
good question. And before we wrap up here, let's drag it out to 7 minutes so we can end on you know hour 15 minutes just to give it a decent time. This is how Dan and Dave are really really bad writers. Regardless if you're going on the book version where there's no Night King, which there is one in the book. There's the Night King and the Night Fort, and
Yeah,
supposedly he was a Stark.
yeah, that had a queen, and he was supposedly a Stark. Yeah,
Yep,
that's
and
where the door comes from. That Cold Hands can't pass through because of the magic of the forest. Yeah,
well, and also you brought up the Queen. Apparently, the Queen was she had skin as pale as snow and bright blue eyes, and she was extremely fair. And they loved you. They had an unnatural love, I believe, is how it's described in the book. And once they consummated their love, that's what turned him into essentially a tyrant, and he ravaged the North for a long period of time. It's suggested that she's a female White Walker. It's I would love to see that explored. Yeah, just because we never see female White Walkers. I really would like to see that explored because the way they describe her is she's essentially the most beautiful thing in the world. which would be hilarious to me, juxtaposed against like the most terrifying thing in the world. I'm not even going to get into what having a intercourse would be would be like with a being like that. Which, hey, maybe that's where someone came from. Who knows? But moving on from that aspect, this is how you know Dan and Dave are not good writers. You remember when they took Craster's kid and they went all the way up to the lands of always winter and then put the kid on the pedestal and the White Walkers were all surrounding him. The Night King came up and touched his cheek and his eyes went blue. Well, whatever happened to that? It is that kid the new Night King? Like, even if the Night King dies, can he just like jump bodies? Is the Night King actually dead? Inquiring minds would like to know.
We're being called out. Hey, if it's true, it's true.
Hey, you know what? Undead Ramen, that's the way they describe it in the books. She's apparently supposed to be the most attractive thing in the world. I don't care if she's the sexiest icicle on the planet. I want answers. I want answers. And if, God, knowing George R. R. Martin's mind, yes, you had sex with a sexy icicle.
When it gets like, like licking a. Never mind.
Sexy snowman, sexy snow woman. In this case. There was never a Knight's King. It was always the Knight's Queen, and this was all just a gigantic farce. And it was always the plan of the sexy snow woman.
I think Elsa. Oh God.
Oh no, this is not supposed to be a Disney movie. Well, it's confirmed. Frozen 3 is going to be about the sexy snow woman.
Let it go.
I have
no. Sorry.
No. I'm just going to pretend that the Let It Go song doesn't exist, and yeah.
Okay, all right. So,
Let it go.
Damn it, dude.
Let it flow.
I live in Oregon. What do you think I'm doing at 12:30 at night?
Oh, snowblower. We're gonna nickname her Snowblower.
Hey, ice wench, fetch me a beer. Oh, shit. That'd be awesome. It would be a cold ass beer, right?
Oh, perpetually cold beer. You know, it's worth making snow babies with the being that might bring death to the entire world for the sake of a cold beer.
Wait, there's Frozen prawn parodies? Okay.
What?
I think I know what I'm doing later. No.
I just don't tell CNN.
I'm kidding. All right, so the last couple minutes. George R. R. Martin, will he release the book in 2021?
No. He's been working on the thing for how long? No, he's not going to release it. I think he's so upset about how the show itself ended and how it got such a bad reputation. I don't think he wants to finish it.
According to him, he doesn't read the interwebs about his own work because that's his story.
All right, that's bullshit. That's bullshit, and everybody knows it because he was giving commentary about it and talking about fan theories for the past like 10 years. Yes, he does. I don't think he wants to finish it because he knows how bad the ending was, because he had a falling out with Dumb and Dumber. And he's already given his notes to people who actually will finish the book. He's just going to sit back and drink and chill. The dude's like, what, 80 something years old at this point in time? Nah, he doesn't care about finishing the book. He really doesn't. And I hate to break it to you guys, it's the truth. It really is. He he would rather work on a science fiction novel that's not popular at all, as opposed to finishing The Winds of Winter. It you're not gonna get it from him.
I
I'm
think we
sorry.
will. I think we will get wins. Dream of Spring, though. I hope Undead Ramen's right. Not that he dies over a stack of cheeseburgers. I hope he actually writes it, but if not, hopefully he has an outline for someone to flesh out, like VC Andrews. Problem, though, there is a big problem. He said, if I die, my work dies with me, damn it. Nobody will be controlling my world. Well, that's true for about 50 years, and then it's fucking fair game, bro.
Except he's already given his notes to at least three other people who have worked on. I know two of them worked on the World of Ice and Fire, and the other one was his editor for the last book, uh, Dance of Dragons. He's already given them his notes. They know how it's gonna. Dude, for crying out loud, Dumb and Dumber knew how the story was gonna end. You're telling me that? Oh, if I die, then yeah, the books will never be. Bullshit. Bullshit. Call him bullshit. Where's my bullshit alarm?
Yeah,
Bullshit. No.
there's,
Bullshit.
there's too much money in on it. Um, hey Jensen, you're here right when we're wrapping it up, but I'm gonna be up for a little bit if you're around in Discord. But Undead Ramen says, narrator Doku did not hate to break it to us.
I I I did not hate to break it to you. It actually pains my heart to give you this information. But indeed, George R. R. Martin might or might not finish The Winds of Winter. But to give you some condolences, there are people who will. Kind of like, well, what happened with The Wheel of Time. Just hope it doesn't drag out to 5 fucking books.
And Undead Ramen says, agrees with you. Bullshit. Whoever gets his estate will take care of that shit. Yeah, that's why I was like, money.
All right,
I'm
hold on. Let
sorry.
me.
If I'm George's fucking great grandchild, if nobody else handles this shit, I'm gonna. You should pay
Well,
me.
no. The thing is, you can actually already go and find this information. It's publicly available on the internet. He's given his manuscripts not only to his editor, but the two people that did work on World of Ice and Fire. And if he does pass away, he's given them uh, explicit permission to finish Winds of Winter and a Dream of Spring. Apparently, the manuscripts are done. It's just he doesn't want to fucking work on them. And considering the way the series ended, I don't blame him.
Yeah, but the complete shift in tone would. I want him to do it. Last thoughts, Doku, because I could drag this out for another hour, but you're gonna be dead tired tomorrow.
You're assuming that I'm tired right now, and I actually have a beer to kill. So first off, I need to get my Gowler horn real quick, because people that are saying that these books will never be finished. Ramen, this one's for you. Bullshit. There you go.
He was lazy before the show ended or even started, and he's lazy now. I don't blame this show for his laziness.
Actually, Ramen does have a point, because It's been over 10 fucking years, dude. 10
Well, did you see
fucking
the
years.
gap between A Storm of Swords and Clash of Kings? No, it was the gap between A Feast for Crows and Dance of Dragons that was even bigger. One was like what, 99 or 98, and then Dance of Dragons was like 2006.
Oh, and dude, not even that. If you were making this much money off that franchise, wouldn't you at least put out a spin-off story besides Dunk and Egg and the Hedge Knight? Like, wouldn't you have been motivated to finish uh uh Winds of Winter and A Dream of Spring and then move on to whatever the fuck it is HBO is gonna pay you for? Like, dude, you have the most successful fantasy franchise of all time. You've
Oh,
made more money. You've made more money than Lord of the Rings.
this is great. I get to use this line and it actually holds context. Oh, Undead Ramen, you sweet, sweet summer child. This
I
show
hate
has
you.
been going, this series of books has been going on since
The nine.
1993.
Yeah. It's been going on since like the earlier late 90s. And
Could you imagine reading the first book right when it came out and you're still waiting?
actually, I think the first book came out in 97 or 98. Either way, it's been going on for like almost 3 fucking decades. Hey, you've made more money than Lord of the Rings. Like, it's not
Well,
even
see, that's
it's
what I'm afraid of. I am afraid. Oh, so it hits 1 a.m. and all the nighttime mofos come out. At least for me on the West Coast. It might be morning over there for all I know. But no, okay. Here's my problem. I don't want it to be the Silmarillion. That's unreadable. I don't care how much you like The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit.
oh, Dodge, let's be
Silmarillion
blunt.
is garbage.
Dodge, let's be blunt. There is a difference between the Hobbit books and the Lord of the Ring books and the Silmarillion. The Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings was a story. The Silmarillion is essentially a background to what the world was and why the world is the way it is. It's not meant to be a story. It's basically meant to be world building and give you an
No,
idea of why the world is, which is why it's such an annoying read.
well, no. He put that together because he didn't think he was going to die yet, and he was going to use it to make a backstory and a new set of books. He didn't. So he had these papers all lying around, and his family's like, well, people will buy this. And they threw them together. That's why it's garbage. I love history. I can read a history book. Dude, I love just reading real history books. Like, I should be able to read the Silmarillion and enjoy it. It's garbage.
Uh, again, the Silmarillion is not a story. It's just random background information to make Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit make sense. It's not meant to actually be a story, which is why it sucks. Now, granted, if you're really deep into Tolkienian lore, you'll probably like the Silmarillion. But the Silmarillion is not there because you're gonna follow this character or that character, and hey, cool, they win, and yay, blah blah. That's not what the Silmarillion is. The Silmarillion is there to explain this is what the wizards are. This is why Middle Earth even exists. This is here's your creation myth. It's just a bunch of crap to explain why this world exists, hammered down into a book that kind of makes sense if you're on drugs.
Jacob, welcome. Yes, Doku's being fair. That's fine. But do you think I'm really going to take advice from an Astros fan? Yeah, Dodgers 2020.
Wait,
Um,
not an Astros fan.
I was talking to Jacob because he keeps messing with me about the World Series. And guess what? You can't do that anymore because we won. That's right. So shut the fuck up about the World Series. And the goddamn Houston Astros cheated in that World Series they won against the Dodgers. There's an asterisk next to it, and they should get their trophy revoked because they stole signals and got caught. Sorry, he's been hammering on me about the fucking Astros for 2 years, and I've had it. I'm done. We won. Fair and square. Now, screw the Cimmerillion. Wrong franchise. Dodgers voted for Biden. Fuck you. Oh, like that? Thought we was cool.
you set it up for it, and you damn well know it.
All right. So there is this theory about the Game of Thrones books. Preston Jacobs, I think, created this theory out of his own head. All right, because he's read all of George's work, right? So he put that together. This is the theory. Game of Thrones is actually a science fiction book. This is how.
I feel like I've heard this before.
Yeah, the land of always winter and stuff. Nuclear fallout. This is like the Fallout game or whatever. So like the Night Walkers and all that is genetic mutation. The warning is also telepathy, which is a genetic manipulation. And all of these castles and stuff have really deep caverns beneath them. The fallout shelters. You have ruins that they have no idea where they came from. The old cities. The land is broke up how it is because of the explosions. You get where I'm going.
Well, to be fair, George R. R. Martin was mostly a science fiction writer. If you look at his career history and his credentials, he's not a fantasy writer. I think Game of Thrones is his only fantasy work. Everything else is sci-fi. So it's definitely an interesting theory. It seems like a bit of a stretch, but it actually, ironically enough, it does fit. It really does.
Yeah, and Preston has more arguments, but I could bring them up, but I can't point out exactly what he points out. I haven't read all of George's work, but he points out books where George wrote about a hive mind. There's your White Walkers and Whites, right? He's written at least 4 books about telepathy and stuff like that, and he writes a lot about blood lineage in his science fiction as well, I guess.
And actually, I take it back. There was, to my knowledge, maybe there's more. There was one other not science fiction, fantasy novel that George R. R. Martin wrote, and that was The Ice Dragon. And I know a bunch of people had theories about ice dragons and that, spoiler warning, because apparently it's a spoiler warning. Yeah, the ice dragon ends up dying and ends up getting killed by an actual dragon. Dragon breathes fire on it and ends up turning it into a puddle. Apparently that puddle is, again, theory, where the werewood tree in Winterfell is. That's why that area is always warm in the books. Apparently that's like the corpse of the ice dragon. But then there's other people that say the ice dragon is what was used to build the wall. I don't know. George R. R. Martin wrote a book about a fucking ice dragon. That's all you need to know.
Actually, Jacob, I can't have fake beef on my channel just for fun. I know damn well you don't watch baseball, dude. Go ahead, Doku. Get back on topic. Go for it. I just had to. I was reading the chat. I'm like, does he really think I'm mad at him?
Oh no, that's literally the only thing I had to say is there is a lot of people that are saying, yeah, there's an ice dragon inside Game of Thrones, and that's either what built the wall, or that's why the walls of Winterfell are the way they are, or that's why there's a puddle that never melts, despite the fact that Winterfell is always freezing fucking cold. That's the ice dragon's corpse. Maybe it would be a nice Easter egg, I guess, but there's nothing to suggest it. So I don't know. That's the only other fantasy work that George R. R. Martin has done. I personally think it would be more amusing if there was at least one ice dragon, and that was what's making the lands of always winter. I would think that would be better from a lore perspective. I don't really want to see it in an actual story, but why is the North always cold? Yeah, because there was a badass ice dragon and it died. And now its corpse is sitting over there and everything's frozen. There you go.
Yeah, and this is a personal theory of mine. I think part of that is geographical. You could say, like the upper North American continent, or Greenland and Iceland and stuff. But I think also George is he's a lefty. He's a climate change enthusiast. It might just be a allegory for global warming, and how if you raise the temperature, then ice will melt, but then that'll cool the Gulf streams, and then everything will freeze, and you'll have an ice age.
I'm actually going to be honest about this as to how I view George R. R. Martin and his writing, specifically his world building. Yeah, his characters are great. The way he crafts a story is great. But I don't think he really has a start to finish idea. And he said it himself, where he just starts writing. He's a grower. He's not an architect. He doesn't do things the way that Dodge, me and you do, where we're trying to think of, this is the story, here's the finish, where do we start? He just starts writing, and he's said it himself. He just starts writing, and it goes from there. I don't think George R. R. Martin ever had an idea how the story was going to end when he started writing A Song of Ice and Fire. He just knew, hey, he said it himself. He started writing, and there's these kids, and they found some wolves, and boom, and then it goes from there, and it goes from there, and it goes from there, and then all of a sudden now he has a story, and it was only supposed to be 3 books, now it's 5, and then now he can't seem to finish 8 books, even though it's been 30 damn years. I don't think George R. R. Martin even understands or knows why there's the White Walkers, why the world is the way it is. And I don't think we're ever going to get an answer to those questions because he doesn't fucking know. It's just a setting to tell a story. That's it.
Yeah, but I mean, I write like that sometimes, where I just get an idea and I roll with it, see where it goes. But then you refine what you started with. And if it's good enough to actually continue, I don't necessarily set an endpoint. I like to build organically. But if you're going to world build, you got to set the world. I really enjoy making, if I'm going to write like a fantasy, I'll make the map first and choose who is there. You know what I mean? And then build a story around that. And like, okay, so you have these horsemen over here. Well, what god do they believe in? And you start to build your outline, I guess.
Oh, and that's the thing. I don't think George R. R. Martin actually does that. I think he set the world around the story, but he didn't create a world. The world is just nothing more than a stage for the characters. And again, this is why I say George R. R. Martin does a really good job at developing characters and crafting a story. But the world that the story takes place in is nothing more than the stage. And that's where I think he really does fail, because people are going to ask questions like, well, why are the lands of always winter? And I don't think he has an answer for that. He's going to have to come up with it on the top of his head, or off the top of his head. There's not going to be a legitimate answer to that, because that's not the point. That's not the point of the story. The point of the story is the Song of Ice and Fire, not why are the lands of always winter?
Well, no, and what is a song? A song was a group of poems, a group of stories about heroic figures. It wasn't necessarily facts. So maybe there isn't even dragons, really. Remember, this is a book coming from a maester, coming from Sam.
No, yeah, like I said, the best example is a Shy by the Shadow. There's a bunch of really crazy crap that comes from a Shy by the Shadow, but it's intentionally left vague, because yes, mystery is a good thing, but it's also, there's nothing important about a Shy by the Shadow.
No, I believe there's a different reason why it's vague. That's why I cut you off. I believe a Shy by the Shadow is China, and in medieval Europe, they might have gotten silk and stuff down the Silk Road. They might have got herbs from China, but I doubt any of them met anybody from there, or if they did, it was one. They didn't know the culture. It was all mystery. Dragons, China, the dragon mythology going back how long? I mean, I think it's blatant.
Well, even came later. That didn't have any bearing on the story proper when Song of Ice and Fire, when he very first started writing it. It was just, there's dragons, don't question it. And then he built on it from there, and he kept going and kept going, and then he came up with something like a Shy by the Shadow, or there was the Eastern Kingdom and the Five Forts, and then the First Long Night. There was, in his original draft of A Song of Ice and Fire, there was never even an Azor Ahai.
Well, yeah, and like, what's west of Westeros?
And then there's also,
America.
Suthos. Oh, then there's also Suthos, where there's the one Valyrian princess who just jumped on her dragon one day and decided to go south. And I don't think George R. R. Martin has answers for these things. He just goes. But that works in the sense that you can tell a lot of stories, but he's a very bottom up, not a top down writer. And so that's why you're never, like, for these types of questions of where did dragons come from, or what's a Shy by the Shadow, you're never going to get answers to that. You're probably never going to get answers to the First Long Night, because there never was one to begin with. It's just a legend. It's a myth.
So, all right. The Grand Northern Conspiracy. Remember, Robb Stark sends out Mormont and Umber to go find the Kronger men, to go find Harlan Stark. Or not Stark, but Harlan Reed. And never are spoken of again. In the show, they did bring it up a little bit. They brought up the North Remembers, but they never did anything with it. I think the books will. And the theory is there is already a conspiracy going on to crown Rickon as the king of the North. And the what's the port city? The fat guy.
Whitewater?
Yeah, I think so actually. He sends fucking God damn it. Oh, he sends after Daenerys casts out what's his name, Mormont or whatever. He sends him to go to Skagos to find Rickon to place him as king. And the Boltons have already captured Winterfell. They have a fake Arya, which is actually in the show. She was there for a while. She's the one that was with Sansa that they take out of the room. She is actually the fake Arya that marries the Bolton bastard.
Oh yeah, that's something that the show completely deviates from in the books, where Sansa's never even in Winterfell. It was actually a fake Sansa.
No, it was a fake Arya because she had dark hair. Or Sansa had light hair.
No, I think it was Sansa where they had a fake Sansa. I think Arya's in the book is still.
No, I'm gonna just Google it to check, but I'm pretty sure I'm right on this one. I think it's a fake Arya.
It might be Arya. I don't remember because it's been probably about 3 or 4 years since I've read the book.
Yeah, Jane Poole. They make her the fake Arya. Yep, I'm right.
Okay, so it's Arya.
Yeah.
Yeah, so see that even deviates more from the show, where it's not even Sansa that gets captured by the Boltons. It's a fake Arya. So because Sansa's still in the Vale.
Yeah, Sansa is pretending to be Littlefinger's daughter. Yeah, even though Littlefinger, anyway.
Oh, and also in the books, Stannis is still alive, and the books in the show deviate so drastically.
Oh yeah. If you were Team Stannis in the show, read the books. He's still alive and well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, Stannis is still going strong. If I remember correctly, Brienne of Tarth and Stannis don't even meet up, and that's from like sample chapters from the Winds of Winter.
Yeah, no, Brienne of Tarth. Last we saw her in the books, I believe she had the rope around her throat. But then I think there was a sample chapter where she said, "I'll get him," and they cut it down. No, that was just a show. No, she has a noose around her throat right now in the books, I believe.
I mean, for all we know, Brienne of Tarth in the show is gonna die, or in the book is gonna die. Again, just the sample chapters deviate so much from the show, and the annoying part is we don't even know if these sample chapters are actually going to stick. It might have changed completely.
I know. That's why I haven't read the Mercy chapters, which are the Arya chapters. And Arya in the book is one of my favorite characters. They screwed her up towards the end in the show, but I even named my cat Arya. That's my cat's name. So
Oh, dude, that's the reason I don't read the sample chapters anymore. Is because I don't know if these chapters are even going to make it into the book, let alone if they're even relevant. And George R. R. Martin might have changed the story completely, especially considering the fact that the show is done, because most people are going to look at the show and think of the last season as that's how it ends. Which I don't think is actually going to be the case.
I Okay, so I don't know if Braun's gonna end up king or Bran. I have no idea. I think John should, and John is almost like in English history what Edward, Prince Edward, the Black Knight or whatever, or the Black Prince.
Yeah, I don't remember the historical context, but I think he turned. It wouldn't surprise me if John is the one that's elected to be king and decides to say, "Yeah, no, screw that," and of his own volition goes back to the wall. That would actually make more sense from a historical context, which George R. R. Martin is following that historical context. That would make more sense, but then you still have to explain what the hell's going on with Bran. Hey, what the hell's going on with the Three-Eyed Raven? What the hell's going on with the White Walkers? You have to explain that. Yeah, that's where the show screwed up, where they don't explain diddly squat, jack shit, it about what the White Walkers are. It's just, oh nope, dead. Spider monkey stab.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And actually, unless you can talk for a few minutes about a theory by yourself, I'm gonna have to end it because I gotta go use the bathroom.
All right, go use the bathroom, and I'm. So this is what I find so frustrating. There are there are so many theories on the internet about what could be, what should be, what might be, and we just get this very lackluster ending to the show Game of Thrones, where okay, yeah, you got Cooklane Bowl and the Hound and the Mountain, they fight, and he finally overcomes his fear of fire and you know tackles his tackles his brother off the edge of the staircase, and they fall to their deaths, and oh yay, hey, okay, you overcame your fear. Clegane Bowl, everybody. Uh, Boring. No. Crap writing. Crap storytelling. Uh, never. And this is maybe for the best. Never explain how the mountain became Zombie Mountain. I would at least like a little more elaboration on that, especially considering one of our major characters was in the frickin' Citadel. Bulks with chains around them. It I would I would like some explanation as to what did the Maesters know? Hey, you've got books that are chained. Hey, the knowledge held within these tomes, these grimoires, whatever, is so dangerous that you have to actually chain them and prevent people from even reading the contents. Yeah, let's just ignore that. Great aesthetics, but it doesn't do anything to push the story forward. So that was the point. You might as well have just found a book in a dusty corner and it would have achieved the same effect. Hey, what's this book? It would have been the same thing. then we can go back to the first season. You know, the White Walkers and this, you know, mystery about them. Yeah, the White Walkers don't exist. They haven't been around for a thousand years. Okay, why did they come back? What's up with the fancy, you know, fancy designs they keep doing? Why are they killing people? Yeah. Then you want to introduce the Night King, character that doesn't exist in the books. Why does he exist? Who is he? What's his motivation? Oh, he just wants to kill the Three-Eyed Raven because world bad, me kill. Really? You can't come with anything other than that? Okay. That's lame, to say the least. And especially if you're going to kill them off. And I'm not even going to get into the fact that the Long Night should have been an entire season, not an episode and a half. Now, granted that one song, or I think it was Podrick, he was talking about Jenny would dance with her ghosts. Good song. It had a very ominous feel to it. That works. It touched on the tragedy at Harrenhal, but there's so much lore behind everything where they don't talk about the tragedy at Harrenhal at all. No pun intended. But then they reference it in a song. Nothing there. Yeah, dragons. Where did dragons come from? I don't know. Somebody with some certain blood just walks into a funeral pyre and, hey, dragons. Yeah. What about the Dothraki? What on earth happened to all of the free cities? We saw a lot of political drama going on there until Daenerys decided, nope, going back to Westeros. You guys have fun. She didn't leave any wards in place and anybody in charge to, you know, not leave these regions that she completely destabilized.
What? Okay.
He just completely destroyed these regions, just destroyed their entire economic structure, and just said, "Oh no, I got my boats. Cool, peace." Are you serious? No, I don't think Daenerys would have done that.
Well, she hasn't in the books yet. Jacob, Lord of the Rings is a very good franchise. But I take issue with your comment. Tolkien spent years creating ideas for his books. Martin, fuck that. I'll take a shit and make it turn turn it into a book. That's not a proper sentence.
Well, the thing is, I want to touch on that real quick. He took a 30-year-long shit, and it still makes less sense than the Silmarillion.
I know it makes total sense. That's why people read into it and get theories. And the thing is, Jacob, Tolkien wrote a story about war and PTSD. That's what he did. We all know it. Look at the ending. I'm not taking anything away from Tolkien. I'm not taking anything away from what he wrote. But it is what it is. George R.R. Martin's a different man. He didn't go to Vietnam because of conscientious reasons. He's a lefty. Okay? He took a different route. So he's writing from a different perspective.
That's why I can't finish his fucking book.
History about war, where Tolkien looked at personal experience.
Well, that's because George R. R. Martin doesn't know jack shit about war, and that's why he can't finish his damn book, because he doesn't understand how to, in his words, good guys are just bad guys playing for the other team. No, when you hit a certain point, there are people that are doing bad things that are unforgivable. Yeah, kind of like how you have the others. If you want to present the others in a light where they're just they're just doing as they know, or as they believe, or as they're compelled to, is what they're doing good? Because no, they're what are the others doing that could be considered good? They're they're not killing people because they want their land so they can farm it and feed their children. No, they're just killing people indiscriminately for no frickin' reason.
Well, no, yeah, and by George's own books, you're gonna tell me, George, that the Boltons are good guys on a different team? No, dude.
Yeah,
the Boltons
again,
are fucked up, and you know it.
yeah, we're just gonna go ahead and murder you and kill your entire family and wipe out your bloodline because fuck you, we want the North. Oh, they're just bad guys playing for the other team. Bullshit. No, they're opportunistic assholes, and no, they're not good people. They're not nice.
You know what?
Everything they've done is bad.
You know what's interesting though? House Stark, the direwolf, House Bolton, they used to skin people, right? Werewolf hunters, huh?
All right,
I'm not going too far out on a limb. It's called warging, my friend.
yeah.
Yeah, gotcha. What,
I'm not.
you got nothing?
I'm not.
You got nothing on that one.
I'm not going to disagree. I'm just going to say it's presented a little more complicated than just being aware, whatever. But no, it is touching on the idea of being more in tune with nature or something, to the point where you embody that thing, which is at its core what it means to be aware something, a werewolf or a were cat. I don't care if it's a were rat. You are warging. You are that thing. So yes, you could make that argument. I'm not going to say you're wrong. I do think George R. R. Martin presents it in a way that is very neutral, which is not a bad thing. But it still begs to question if that type of magic does exist in this world. Well, are you using it for good or evil? Because it's not treated good or in a positive light in the books, but yet in the show it's treated as like a superpower.
Yeah, Dan and Dave got that wrong because, yeah, House Stark has been mixing with Southern blood to dilute their Northern blood. They don't want wargs in the family.
And that's the thing. We're being able to warg something is treated like a curse. It's not supposed to be, even amongst a family of wargs, knowing that they have the ability to do so, it is looked down upon. It's treated like you're a cursed child. If I remember correctly, in the books, they even talk about wargs are put down. They straight up kill you if they find out the fact that you have that ability. It's viewed as like dark magic, which leads me to believe it has something to do with the others in the books, and that goes back to the Night King, the Night Fort, something they don't talk about in the show, but in the books they talk about that, and again, I think Dan and Dave kind of missed that. Yeah, that little detail where warging is not supposed to be a superpower. It's supposed to be something that very, very well might get you killed.
Well, no, and what Bran does, and we got a minute left, not even, but what Bran does when he wargs into people, and he does this in the books to numerous people, that is like akin to the R word that YouTube doesn't like, because you're taking over that person's body. You're taking over their mind, and they can feel you enter, and they fight it. That's what made Hodor insane.
Well, it's not even that they fight it. It's the fact that when you take that person over and you actually take control of them, you completely change the outcome of, you know, whether you want to call it destiny or their future or this or that. You you essentially make them your bitch, and you almost always, without a doubt, you know, uh, for lack of a better term, you're condemning them to a horrible fate. It usually never, ever, ever ends well. And granted, it might help you out in the future, but you're condemning this person, and you're doing it willingly. There's nothing good about being a warg. You're essentially a dick. You're an asshole. There's nothing good, and that's why Hodor, when you see it in the show, he's perfectly normal. Yeah, he's not the sharpest knife in the drawer, but he's not running around going Hodor, Hodor, Hodor until he ultimately dies. Because at some point in the future, because Hugh decided to be omnipotent asshole Bran, wargs into him and takes control of his body, and then he decides to hold the door, and then he becomes Hodor. You have condemned him to a horrific death and being ripped apart by zombies. And Bran doesn't even show remorse. In my opinion, not a good way to.
No, theoretically, he doesn't know what he's doing is wrong.
Yeah, but is still, even after that happened, don't you think you would be a little shaken up knowing that, oh, even if I didn't engage in this and this event happened in the future and it's now in the past, but then it leads to something that happens in the future of now, don't you think that would, time travel nonsense aside, don't you think that would at least shake you up a little bit? Even if you're blank state, I am Bran. I can no longer hold Len. I am the three-eyed raven. Don't you think that would at least kind of screw with you a bit?
I don't think he's going to turn out like that in the books, but yeah, he seemed really aloof and odd. But I am going to cut it off here. We can move to Discord if you still want to stay up. I'm still awake. But you said an hour. We went 2. We're going to do more Game of Thrones stuff. I want to pick a theory next time and dissect it and either say why we agree with it or why we don't. And then tomorrow I have, or today, because it's 1 in the morning, I have the history stream with MC. Mad's History Hour, that'll be coming out. We also have the Red Eye that I'm doing regularly again. Had a really good turnout tonight for the weekend Red Eye. And Thursday, I'm now doing Deep Space Nine reviews with Jez. We're going to start at the very beginning, Emissary. And I already asked him, are you in it for the long haul? He said yes. That's right. We're milking 7 seasons of this shit out.
Oh boy. Well, you have fun with that. As far as Game of Thrones, yeah, the next theory we should really break down is we need to talk about the others / the White Walkers, because we don't have a solid answer on that, and we need an answer on the others, and we really do.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for coming out tonight, and everybody that'll watch later. If you're new, hit like, subscribe, little bell thingy. You know what to do. We're gonna be rolling out some merch here soon. Good night, everybody.